You are listening to the Free to Be Mindful podcast, which invites you along on a journey to learn of mindful living, grow in mental health, and inspire through personal growth. In a world where we can often feel much stress and overwhelm, this podcast provides bite-sized tips and real talk conversations, empowering you to embrace mindfulness and nurture your full potential. I'm your host, Vanessa de Jesus Guzman, licensed therapist, retired educator, entrepreneur, and mom of two. I'm passionate about helping busy moms reduce the overwhelm and to live life intentionally without losing their, well, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Free to Be Mindful podcast. I hope that you're feeling good, looking good, and doing better in this world than you were yesterday. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome Michelle, who is the mom of a complex kid. Michelle has been her son's best advocate and has learned through the years what it takes to get the best care for her child. She's a founder of Collective Wisdom for Complex Kids, which is a support group for moms with kids with disabilities. She has a passion for helping families reevaluate and prioritize their dynamics, along with guiding them from confusion to clarity while raising complex children. And I really want to encourage you that if you have a child in your life who perhaps has any type of disability, no matter how small or how big, and that is what Michelle calls a complex kid, as you'll hear about in just a moment, I really want you to listen to this episode with an open mind and an open heart. Here we go. All right, Michelle, welcome to the Free to Be Mindful podcast. I'm so happy you're with us today.
Oh, Vanessa, I'm so glad that you invited me. I'm happy to be here with you. This is great.
My pleasure. So, we just heard a little bit about your bio, but I'd love for you to have the opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, your background, and what your expertise is.
Sure. I am a mom with what I like to call a complex child, a complex kid. He is my love and my beautiful big boy. But I have gone through a lot with him, and he is one in 170 kids with a genetic disorder that is was just discovered about 3 years ago.
Wow. And I'm
And
going to have to pause you right there. You said 1 in 170 kids in your county, in your state, or globally?
globally
Wow.
in the world as of right now, it is called TBR1, and it's a genetic disorder that causes autistic traits, intellectual disability, developmental delays, speech delays, epilepsy. There's lots of things that a big range of symptoms that it will cause on your child. We are very lucky he's in the milder side of things.
Mm.
And so, but trying to navigate and getting to this diagnosis, it's been a ride.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness. And I mean, being a mom, period, is so much. But when they have any type of learning disability or physical disability, but then when you share with us 1 in 170 kids on such a big scale, that has to be so hard to first, as a mom, think about like, what is it that's happening until you figure it out. You said just recently. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
sure. He was born premature. So we already knew that there was something developmentally going on. And so when he turned about 18 months, I could tell that he wasn't walking as well. He wasn't catching up with the kids. And so all of these things, and as a mom, you know that you have that mama feeling inside of you. Something is going on. I need to get help. I need somebody to help me get somewhere. And Vanessa, I went everywhere.
Mm.
When he was 2 years old, I reached out to somebody because he wasn't speaking at all. All he did was grunt. And but he was interactive, but he grunted. And then we had to go through speech therapy, right? Because that's the first thing that you go to. Um, He's still in speech therapy. He's 10 years old. But
Mm,
the process from when I knew that there was something going on to where we are now, it's been 8 years,
that's a
nine
lot.
years trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, what I am doing and what I'm trying to do is actually help these moms that are in that beginning stages of where do I go? What do I do? Because you're usually thinking that you're a bad mom because you don't know how to discipline your child and he's having meltdowns on the corner and you don't know what to do, what's going on. You wonder, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
You internalize everything. And so, what I am trying to do is I'm on a quest to help these moms understand that it's not them and they're not alone and they're going to get through it. And
Yeah, I
so,
resonate with that so much. I remember myself when my child was 2 years old, it was very similar. I would go to the doctor, and because I'm an educator, I would say, I know they have to know around these many words, but the same thing, he grunts and he's very animated, but you can't understand a word that he's saying. And I remember the doctor in all of his professional experience, he told me, well, stop speaking Spanish to him at home so that he can just learn English. And I took that advice and I said, thank you, and found myself another doctor. And then enrolled him in early intervention for speech therapy, which he had for quite some time. But it's frustrating sometimes when you, like you said, you have that innate mama bear, that gut feeling like something is going on here. And then to go to a professional, and I'm not sure how many professionals you've seen, and especially since it took so long to get that diagnosis, that has to be really frustrating. And then you want to help your kid, but if you don't even know what it is, it's really hard to help.
you don't know where to go. You go to a
Yeah.
pediatrician, the pediatrician looks at you and they go, well, he's going to grow out of it. He's a little
Mm,
behind. Let me look at the growth curve and everything's looking okay. And that's all they can see.
right.
But inside,
Yeah.
you know that there's something, and you have to become the advocate for your child.
And your journey, was it a windy road until you were able to get someone who figured it out?
Yes. So we went through the first diagnosis that he got was childhood apraxia of speech, which is
Mm,
a planning issue. And so we found a speech therapist that was able to help us. What they do is when you have a child who's not speaking, they go directly to certain things. So they go, okay, he has autism because he's not talking. But they don't really, at 2 or 3 years old, there's no way to really diagnose a
yeah.
child, especially a child who's not speaking, right? So we went through speech therapists, we went through behavioral therapists.
Mm,
I went through a therapist myself, and
I
I have
believe
been
it.
going for, 10 years because you yourself feel guilty that you can't help them. And it took me a long time to put together a team that could help him.
Mm,
His diagnosis is complex. It wasn't just speech therapy. He needed behavioral therapy. We needed a geneticist,
wow.
that we found out later that we needed it. So all of these things, you have to come and you have to put together a team. And that is probably, if you want to help them, that's one of the many things you have to do. Let me just put it that
Yes.
way. One of the many things you got to do.
Yeah, and I would say along with that, not only an interdisciplinary team, right? But it's important to realize a couple of things coming from, with 18 years of experience in education. It's important for parents to keep in mind, and I'm sure you're going to let us know so much more, that not only should it be interdisciplinary, but as much as possible, it should be early. Depending on what the diagnosis is, the earlier sometimes that we catch things, the more that we can do, especially throughout that, 1, 2, 3 years of age, they can go through early intervention. and then go to school, get the IEP. And something that I remember as a school counselor that I would have a lot of conversations with parents about is not to be scared of those labels. A lot of parents would say, well, I don't want that. I don't want my kid to be SPED or special education. And back in the day, depending on how old you are, the programs used to look differently, but we've evolved so much as a society and in education that my child, I'd rather him have that label, so to speak, in quotation marks, but get the services he need early and then grow out of it or improve so much that when he's older, he either has what he has in place that the gaps have closed or has what he has in order to continue to do well. But sometimes there's some resistance, I remember in my experience, because we're scared, and we don't know what we don't know. And then sometimes we lose that time for our kids. So interdisciplinary and early, I don't know if you'd have anything else to add to that.
You are on point. That is one of the things I try to go into the Facebook groups and help other women that are struggling with these things. And whenever I see a post that says, my son is 3 years old and not speaking, if you're posting that, you already know that there's something,
Something.
right? Something is telling you.
Right.
And then they go, should I be looking for somebody? Is this going to go away? And I get on there, and my answer is, if you're feeling like there's something, go get it checked.
Yeah, go
If
with your
they are,
gut.
go to a speech therapist. They will be able to tell you. And the earlier you get in, the better off your child is going to be. And so you are so on point. And I love that you have this educational background. And the sad thing about it is that the majority of parents out there do
You
not.
don't. Yeah.
And they don't have anybody to support them. And so you were talking about that fear of having a diagnosis, a
Mm.
fear of being in a special education class. I was there. It
Mhm.
was frightening to me. I I did not want to hear that he had childhood apraxia speech. I didn't want to hear that he had autism. I didn't want to hear that he had ADHD, because what do you expect, right?
Right.
When you are a mom, you want to be the greatest mom, and you want your
Mm-hmm.
child to be a happy child that doesn't melt down, that doesn't, have to be on the go all the time,
Right.
that has a speech disorder. You don't want those things. And it comes to you, and you have to, and it's an internal battle. You
Yes.
have to go through the process yourself so you can help your child.
Yes, I love that you said that it's an internal battle. And I look at it similar through the lens of when I have clients, let's say middle school, teens, sometimes younger, who come out and identify with LGBTQ. And then they come to me and they choose to share it, with their parents, either with me or after me. And it hurts parents, I feel like. I think there's some similarity there because we have expectations for our kids. We start planning out our kids' lives. We start thinking about it almost as like a telenovela, like a movie. Like they're gonna go through
Yes.
this and this is what this is gonna look like. We have all of these expectations that then when they defy, knowingly or unknowingly, right? Consciously or unconsciously, when they defy one of those expectations, and you want to say no, it's not supposed to be like that, right? Because you have your list, your movie in your mind, but your child is your own person. It's hard for the parent to accept that because it's not just your child's life that's different, but then it's also your life that changes, especially with a child who identifies as having a disability. Your life changes because you have to do so much for that child. And that's really, really hard to accept and then to live with.
For sure. I will tell you, one of the hardest things that happened to us was My husband and I, we used to love going out to dinner. What ended up happening was that it got to a point we couldn't do it. He couldn't sit down for 2 minutes. He
Mm.
needed to be on the go the whole time. He would scream because he couldn't communicate. And then we would pass him around. It was like, okay, you eat, and then I'll come, I'll take him, and you can sit down and you can eat.
Tag teaming
And
it.
this is just one aspect of your life. Then there's the other ones, which are, you have friends and you go to your friends' houses and they don't understand because they don't know how it is. So you start getting less and less invitations to go to, and you start second guessing yourself. You really do.
Hmm.
And those are things that really, really affect the moms and the dads. And one of the things that I always talk to the moms that are going through this is you have to find a community of people who understand what you are going through.
Yes.
And if you don't have that support, that village that is going to help you through this, it is going to be so, so, so hard.
Yes. And I'm sure it's hard enough for moms as it is to even step out on a limb and ask for the help. I know me, myself personally, it's hard to
Yeah.
ask for help because not that I don't want to accept it. I accept it when it's given, but I feel bad asking because I don't want to put anybody out of their way. I don't want to make anybody feel bad. And then I don't ask, but then I feel even worse because I get farther and farther in the hole. So it's hard to put yourself there, but it's so necessary because it's a lot to bear, but you don't have to bear it by yourself, especially when we have people like you who are putting teams together to help moms go through this. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, because I was that mom, because I went through that, I have finally figured out the certain things that you have to do. So you can be a sane mom. And so I decided to start what I call Collective Wisdom for Complex Kids. And we have a Facebook group where I do small trainings on like meltdowns or on IEPs or insurance companies. What do you
Mm,
need to know when you're dealing with an insurance company that doesn't want to cover speech therapy because it's just a delay?
right.
What do you have? All of those things. So all of this is what I am trying to help moms with because you don't realize that those are qualities and that you're going to have at some point if you have a child that I call a complex kid.
Yes. And by the way, I
So
love that you use that phrase, complex kids, because we can be going through a lot of things that make us complex people, and we definitely have complex kids. So you offer all of these resources, which is wonderful because again, parents don't know what they don't know. And here you are offering all of these things to help with the path so that hopefully it's a little bit easier as you're dealing with everything, I'm imagining.
yes, I feel I've been there and I will do everything in my power that I can do to make another mom that is going through what I went through to feel that comfort, feel like she is equipped to deal with all of the things that are going to come her way. Being, like I said before, IEPs, school districts, or insurance companies, family, your husband, your other child that is not as complex as your child. These are things that you're not thinking about. And these are things that I am teaching in my Facebook group, in my cohort, if you want to call it. Just,
Mm.
it's a community. It's where you find that comfort that you need for you, for your family. And I really, truly love helping women and dads, even so
Right.
they can have a path, or at least find some kind of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And Michelle, what I really appreciate about you and your services is that you're not only dealing with the more tangible, right? Like the things that they need to know and doctors and schools and all the insurance, all of that information, but you touched upon it a few times already is that emotional need, that self-care need, that mindset need, because it's really easy to lose yourself. It's really easy to lose yourself as a mom, as a woman. And then if you have a partner within, it's really easy to lose a relationship because you're so hyper focused on one aspect that you lose the rest of this. And then my question would be, a rhetorical question is, are you finding joy in life?
But, one thing that I found is that during this process, they do make accomplishments. They are
Mm,
making progress. If you take the time to celebrate those small wins,
yes.
you will find those small pieces of joy that are happening throughout the time that you are going through this dark tunnel. But maybe a month ago, we went on a hike. And let me tell you, it was the first time we
Wow.
hiked for an hour. There were no meltdowns. We were walking, and I'm going, oh my gosh, we are doing this. And do you know how happy I was? I pulled out my cell phone and I'm recording this, and I'm going, we are on a hike and we are having fun. And those are the things, the small wins that you
Yes.
have to celebrate.
Yes.
Because if you just look at the negative and, oh, this is happening to me, oh, this is happening to my son, you're going to go in the negative and that black hole that it is going to be really hard to get out of.
Yeah.
And small wins,
Yeah.
small, joyful moments.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I'm so proud of you. I want to tell you because it's so easy to be like, okay, next that was fun. We had a good time. What's the next thing, right? Because I feel like especially as mom and as women, we're always like on to the next with the mile long list of things to do that we forget to celebrate those small moments and we forget to have a little bit more gratitude for those small things. Sometimes we hear the word gratitude and we think Thanksgiving around the table once a year and that's all. But again, part of my mindful living framework is really thinking about every single day. I mean, at minimum 3 to 5, what are you grateful for in that day? And not the Thanksgiving list, the family, house, food, like all of that. Yes, the obvious. But we went on a hike. We got there, no meltdowns, and everybody had a good time. And even if there was a meltdown, that can really make a big shift in your mindset, whether you have a complex kid or whether you're a complex person yourself, and really help you look at life so differently if just integrating that small aspect of mindful living in your life.
Yes, yes. It took me a long time to get to this place. I will tell you that. It is not an easy task. It's not an easy thing to do. It is, I think it's the human nature to really not, just like you were saying, moving on to the next thing, or I have another problem that's coming up that I need to solve. But you have to take that
Yeah.
and find that happiness in your life somehow.
Yes, yes. Definitely starting with mindset, the way that you look at things, integrating gratitude in your life, celebrating the small things. And I'm imagining, and I know it's tough, as I say again, also with the newborn, because not that it's all the same, but the lack of sleep and what an impact that can
And
make.
start.
Uh, but how it drains you, of putting effort, pouring into everyone else all of the time. It's really important for us to just get down to the basics and make sure that we're nourishing ourselves, that we're moving our bodies in some way, that we're getting at least somewhat acceptable sleep so that we can continue to pour into those that we love. Because if we are not okay, how can we make sure that others are okay?
You have to take care of yourself. And it's really easy to forget about it too. So
So, how is your son nowadays?
He's great. We actually have been going through a really good time, although we still have our moments. Don't,
Of course.
Monday was a really bad morning. But that was on Monday. Last Friday, I will tell you another story because this is actually like I'm very proud of him for doing this. He had to get a blood test, and I took him over to the Children's Hospital here. And we went in, he was the only one there. And he asked the guy, "How much blood?" And he said, "One vial." And he's like, "Okay, I'm going to do it myself." So he walked into the room, sat down on the chair, let the guy poke him in the arm, get the blood, and he comes on and he said, "I did it all by myself, mommy."
So good.
We're excited for him. Like he's 10, he's developing, he's learning, and he's happy. So those are like, what else can you ask for, right? He's taken care of. I sometimes lose my mind, but I think
As we
that
all do.
all do, right? But he's doing great. And we kind of know the expectations are different. We set different expectations.
Mhm.
We set because you have to. You have to.
Yes. Oh, they're so, so lucky to have you. I hope that you are also taking care of yourself. And with that being said, what is your favorite way to engage in self-care or to engage in mindful living?
So for me is my yoga. We've been looking forward to this, but on Saturday we're leaving for a week vacation
Nice.
to go to Cancun with the family. So it's going to be 1 week away. I'm turning everything off so I can take care of myself, my family, have fun.
Good for
Um,
you.
Although we can't do those things, like we can't go on, week-long trips, that every day that just taking some big, deep, deep, deep breaths, remembering the good things that happened that day. Um, if you can do those small things, I feel like you you feel better.
Definitely. Oh, I hope you have such a good time in Cancun. That sounds so amazing. And Michelle, I always ask if you could be remembered for one thing in the world, what would that one thing be?
That I have been able to help countless moms
Mm,
to find comfort with their complex kids.
I
I
love
really
that.
want to be remembered for that.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing. And again, tell us what is your Facebook group? And I'm sure we have a lot of listeners and a lot of watchers on YouTube that do have complex kids themselves. So anything you can offer to help them would be greatly appreciated. Where can we find you?
Of course. So it's called Wisdom Number Four Complex Kids. We're a Facebook group. We are also on Instagram, the same thing, Wisdom for Complex Kids. My website is the same thing. Everything is Wisdom Number Four Complex Kids. There's a lot of PDFs on how to manage meltdowns, how to deal with your complex child, and finding a team that's going to work for you. There's a lot of resources that I have on my website and on my Facebook group. We do lives. So find me. I would love to have you schedule a call with me if you would like. I love talking to parents and trying to help them in any way that I can. So thank you for having me. This has been so fun to talk to you.
Oh,
I
thank
love
you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for sharing of your story, for being vulnerable and real with us, and for the work that you're doing because it's so necessary. So it's so great that you're there giving of yourself and all of these resources. And I'm sure so many people are really benefiting from them. And we'll be sure to include all of these links and all of the information in the show notes. So if you're listening or watching, you can definitely go to those and please get help not only for your complex child, but also for yourself because you cannot pour from an empty cup. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Vanessa. It was great. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, again for coming on the podcast. And it's so wonderful when people can keep it real, and it's not always easy. It's messy, especially at first. But when it comes to our kids, should also be true when it comes to ourselves. We really should do the most with the time that we have. And not only as a therapist, but as an educator, I do almost beg you, if you have a complex child yourself, don't be afraid to seek help because, again, the earlier that you do, the more that you help your child. And it's much different if you pull a kindergartner, first, second grader out for OT, PT, speech, whatever it is, an additional remedial class. It's much easier to do it then than in middle school or than in high school when they become a little bit more socially aware. If it's needed, it's needed. But when we can catch it early, it helps our kids out so much more. I would also like to share that as a former educator, I also offer educational consultations, and that is used primarily for people who are coming across the big alphabet soup that education usually offers between IEPs, 504s, INRSs, RTI. There's so many things, and some of them differ from state to state, but IEP and 504s are national and they're law-binding documents. So if you don't know where to start and you need a little bit of guidance as far as just the educational piece, that's something that I offer through my practice. And for all of the links and information that we offer today, please be sure to take a look at the show notes. For today's guided meditation, whether you have a complex child or whether you have no children, fur children, plant children, and even just for yourself, just take a moment and think of some things that you're grateful for. Again, not just a Thanksgiving list, as I call it, but for the small moments, for the joyful moments, and even for those hard moments, if they weren't so hard that day, if the lesson was learned that day after that tough moment, if you had the help that you needed after that tough moment, or whether you conquered that tough moment even for just a moment. If we implement having a gratitude practice at the beginning or end of our day, only takes 30 to 60 seconds, you'd be surprised of how our mindset can change and how our view and perspective on life can change. My friends, it is always my pleasure. And in a world where we are free to be anything that we want to be, we are always free to be mindful. Catch you next week. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. It would mean a ton if you took this moment to review the Free to Be Mindful podcast on the platform you catch your favorite shows. That quick and easy act lets me know what you enjoy, and it helps others find the podcast too. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you can listen along next week. In the meantime, I welcome you to catch me on social media at Counselor V de Jesus. And as always, remember, in a world where you are free to be anything that you want to be, you are always free to be mindful. Catch you next week.